Hey, everybody, really excited for this chat around the future of optical broadband networking here with a true insider and, of course, a leading provider at Cisco. Eve, how are you?
I'm fine, Evan. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. We are just chatting about weather and locale and travel, and you're off to PTC in Hawaii, the big telco get together. So I'm super jealous. We're going to learn about that. Before we jump into you and your mission within Cisco, maybe introduce yourself and your team within the organization.
Sure. So I'm a senior product marketing person within the optical business unit. That's basically in Bill Gartner's large organization that includes optical systems and optics. And so I've been doing this for almost 10 years at Cisco. Previously, I've been at various routing companies and optical companies, and I was actually an analyst for 9 years covering the optical space at IDC and ACG Research. So,
Wow, fantastic. Well,
been
I have
around for a
a
while.
great opportunity to educate myself and ask some questions, get some pretty unique insights, I think. So, walk us through the Cisco's business in the optical space. Of course, you are a giant, but you have a really unique proposition in optical networking, last mile, and of course, broadband in all segments. What's the state of play within Cisco at the moment as far as optical networking goes?
Well, I think the real play is a little bit more in the metro and regional metro
Mhm.
area than it is in the broadband. I'll give you a little history. It was really kind of fun to see this all evolve because I think the change that happened and the sort of paradigm shift that happened is as large as sort of like voice over IP
Mm.
coming to market. So what happened was there was a lot of work done on the silicon chips for our routers, and what really happened over time there is we just increased the scalability of the routers massively by putting it all into this chip. So you took these big honking routers that were real power sucks, and all of a sudden they're down to like anywhere from one to a couple of RUs,
Mm.
and that they're fitting into the data center now rather than the sort of the larger service provider space. So this huge shift to be able to radically reduce the space and the power, but also massively scale the routers and their capability to support so much more capacity was actually happening in parallel with what was going on at Acacia, the company that we bought, where they were basically taking what were large transponders in the market that basically take all of the digital signals and put them into an analog line system and reducing that into. I usually have a toy here, but reducing it to something along the lines of this from a size standpoint, and that basically got our routing group and our optical group together to have a lot of really interesting discussions about how the architecture could really change. Because if you look at service provider networks today, nobody would build a new network the way they look today. Everyone would be like, no, I would never, start that way.
Mm.
And so, the question is, for expansions or new networks, we can do a lot to help them, but how do we help the networks today, which are pretty multi-layered and complicated? How do we help simplify them? So we kind of looked at the routers and the optics and said, how can this all change? And we can really simplify it and bring the layers down, and sort of reduce the OTN layer and put a lot of that traffic onto the IP layer by enabling some private line emulation and doing that at sort of the 10 gig access area, but also doing it at the 100 gig layer too. And then all of this leveraging sort of the natural elements of the routers, like statistical multiplexing,
Mm.
that sometimes we forget about. All of that ends up being a real architectural shift so that you don't have to have deployed as many wavelengths on the optical layer because you're utilizing more of the IP layer. And the IP layer is almost, I wouldn't say free, but is so massively scalable now that you're using more of that. So our whole vision is to really reduce the layers, reduce the number of control planes, and simplify the whole network. And that kind of results in less space, less power, simpler networks. And what that can do is for service providers, it allows them to actually sell off some floors of space that they have, which are expensive, possibly sell off buildings,
Mm.
and really economize their infrastructure in a much better way over time.
Yeah, amazing proposition there. And of course, we've seen over the last decade the rise of 5G and really the adoption of cloud at scale. That must have really turbocharged your activities, your mission in Cisco as well.
Yeah, I mean, optical networking has to always stay ahead of the
Mm.
capacity needs. What we have found is that hyperscalers and service providers have usually provisioned their networks to have a little bit of upside, call it 20 or 30% of available bandwidth for their networks in case they need to all of a sudden,
Mm.
upscale their networks and add more capacity immediately. And so it's always been important for us to stay ahead of the curve there, make sure that we can scale, make sure that we're always offering the next, higher wavelength capacity, whether it's on a subsea link or whether it's on a long haul link or whether it's in the data center area. The whole idea is like, can we allow them to transfer 1.2 terabit on a wavelength in the metro area? The answer is yes. Can we do
Wow.
even further on that? Yes. So we've been doing some field trials lately. We just proved that we could do 1.1 terabit over 1100 kilometers. And so that
Wow.
kind of gets out of the metro area and expands it to more of the metro regional area where 1 terabit has gone now over 1,000 kilometers. And that's really how we're helping. And as we can increase from 1 terabit to 1.2 terabit to 1.6 or whatever, going on and increase the distance over time, that's really the bang for the buck and the savings that we'll provide to our customers over time, so that they get single wavelengths at higher capacity over longer distances. That's really where we're helping them.
Oh, it's fantastic to see it in action. So it wouldn't be a tech chat if we didn't somehow work in AI. But what do you see the role of automation and AI in service provider networks today within your customers? What are they asking for? What are they hoping to see?
Well, I think we're still all figuring out the
Mm.
AI part of this, but there's no question that data centers themselves within the data centers are having to scale massively to be able to support all of the potential AI activity that's going to come. And then there's always the connection between those data centers, whether it's on a campus or whether they're connecting over longer distances or even for disaster recovery. Those connections are going to have to get bigger and bigger as to support the data center growth and what's happening there. So AI is certainly driving it. Cloud services have clearly driven, the need for more capacity. Everybody has outsourced their Microsoft utilities and their video and everything else to the cloud now. So those cloud services are really driving, a bulk of it. I think that we'll continue to see that. I mean, the optical networking market has, gosh, when I was sort of tracking the market, I think we were around 10 billion dollars, and 10 billion spending a year, and we're upwards of 14 now and continuing to grow. And that's actually with the price pressure that's happened,
Mm.
orthogonally. So prices have come down for a lot of the type of equipment that we've been selling, but the capacity needs have gone up, and so the market is still there and very very, very healthy. And I think we've seen, reasonable amount of consolidation in the marketplace. I don't know how much more we'll see. People speculate, but I don't think that's a huge thing to necessarily, be hot on right now.
Yeah, so you talk about the sort of cloud to client approach that you have. Maybe give us some insight. Are large enterprises, data centers, what sort of pipes connectivity are they looking for these days from their service provider partners, and what's your role in that as well?
Well, I think the largest verticals for high bandwidth needs are the government, the public
Hmm.
sector, followed by the finance sector, and certainly healthcare. And government, I mean, I believe the U.S. government has said, they're well over $20 billion a year in spending on optical networking just to handle all of the video
Wow.
transactions that come in from all over the world in order for them to see sort of the over the hill view to be able to communicate back to folks on the ground what is on the other side of the hill or wherever. The public sector are really sort of the forts and air force bases and all of that have really been, you know, on older technology for years and really need to be modernized. And so there's a lot of turnover that's been happening over the last, I'd say, 2 to 5 years to modernize those networks and change them over to more IP networks and connect them to colo areas and connect them to the internet. Um, and then the financial guys, I mean, everything's about low latency for them.
Hmm.
So they're always looking for the edge, and they've been looking for diverse routes as well as, more bandwidth and, faster transaction times. And, the nice part about those guys is they have relatively deep pockets and are willing to spend on whatever does give them the edge. And then, the healthcare sector is fascinating. I mean, the interesting thing is that the actual underlying network that connects data centers and has disaster recovery, segments to it, it's relatively the same style of network. It's not particularly that different, but the
Mm.
applications from each of these verticals are radically different. So the application, for government, for video and for AI are huge. You know, Financial, it's all about the transactions. It's all about securing all of those transactions. For healthcare, it's really all about the MRIs and the surgery videos and everything else and the security around that. But how much have things changed? We no longer carry the X-rays with us anymore in those manila envelopes or even on a CD. Every doctor, doesn't really matter what hospital it is anymore or wherever you got your MRI, every doctor can now just pick up that picture right away. And that's due to the underlying optical networks, which have connected doctors' offices, hospitals, and all around every metro. So really a lot going on there. And then the hyperscalers have their own data center infrastructure in the metro, which they've been growing and growing in order to get closer to the local eyeballs and make sure that everybody has not only what their broadband access, but broadband access so that they can have all of the video and streaming that they want. And gosh, wasn't it 5 or 6 years ago everybody wondered whether streaming could really happen? And here we are now going, which one is that streaming on? How do I
Yeah,
find that?
what a world. What a world. You mentioned security. Of course, Cisco is known for its security chops. What is unique or special about optical when it comes to security? I mean, you're seeing all these almost cyber war like events happening, attacks on undersea cables and all kinds of things. What do you have to think about when it comes to security integrity on the optical side?
Yeah, I mean, we do the best we can as far as making sure that we have encryption enabled on
Mhm.
all of our hardware platforms. We definitely have the FIPS level, can't break into the hardware as well.
Mm,
I mean, security has to be enabled on all levels and all
mm,
layers of hardware and software, and so it's a vast opportunity and a vast area of deployment, and sort of everybody has to be thinking security all the time. But I think one of the things that has helped is as we narrow down the number of devices that are in the network and the closer that they're connected together, like having the optics in the routers, there are fewer devices that are in the network that have to do the security upgrades, that have to be
mm,
maintained for security. So I think we're moving a lot more towards just more focused security upgrades on hardware and software when we do sort of this convergence of the IP and the optical layers. So that's very much a help. As far as Cisco wide, I'm not qualified to really talk
mm,
about that, but I know that we have a huge amount of security companies that we've bought, and the idea that we basically entertain security as a full
mm,
package. You don't want security with one piece here and one piece over there, and
mm,
then hope it all works together. Um, what we found is that when you do that, it's up to the customer to make sure that all those pieces work together. And a company like Cisco is like, let us do that for you. Let us take care of that, and we'll make sure that you're covered, from hardware to software across the board on that. And I think that's a really good message. And I think that the bulk of our customers want that. They want to be able to rely on one vendor to support all of that. So
oh, fantastic. Yeah, the security is part of the culture, which is amazing to see. The other thing that's amazing to see is the focus on sustainability and green tech. And I was
yes,
at an NTT research event, and they're sort of reinventing the future of their optical network design. And sustainability is the number one goal. Not It's not an afterthought or number three or four on the list. But you talk about sustainability as well, and not just environmental sustainability, but recycling. And well, tell us what's
yeah,
your
it's been huge.
perspective on that?
I've had chats with our chief sustainability officer folks a couple of times, and they've been plotting away on this stuff for a long time, and they're just happy that people actually care about it now. To be honest with you, I mean, they're thrilled because they've been working at this for a long time. The routed optical networking architecture that I talked about, the optics and the routers, and moving the traditional services, the private line services, to the IP layer, and adding automation, all really helps with the sustainability. So, like I said, we're moving from very large platforms to much smaller platforms. The space is reduced, the footprints, less, power is dramatically reduced, but a bunch of things that we don't talk about as often, or haven't been, is sort of the packaging, the shipment stuff, and the
Mm,
installation parts of this. So, the packaging that went on with these very large systems were, huge chassis on the order of, these 7 foot, you know, whatever you call them, racks.
mhm,
And then each one of the Align cards, were packaged separately to go into these big
mm,
platforms. Well, now we're talking about a 1, 2 RU platform that gets packaged once. And all of the optics, rather than being sealed up separately, can be laid out, in one
mm,
sort of flat thing and packaged carefully together. All the packaging is now recyclable, reusable. It's not that horrible stuff that you didn't even want to touch. So there's been, just from a manufacturing standpoint, the packaging has really changed, down and come down in size, and been, become recyclable and repackageable. The other side of it is that the shipment costs have been reduced because we're shipping such smaller stuff. And from a software perspective, zero touch provisioning, being able to turn up a lot of these platforms while, you don't have to be there. You don't have to do the truck roll to turn it on and be there to turn on the wavelengths, has been huge as well. So that is a sustainable edge as well, where you're not sending trucks to do the turn up. One of the things I wanted to kind of get to on automation, while somewhat tied to sustainability, but
Mhm.
it's interesting because a lot of our customers who have merged their IP and their optical groups together have actually done a really good job with starting their automation journey, because they're a smaller group of people and it's easier for them to do. Really, the very, very large service providers want to automate more, but it's very difficult for them to do because they're so siloed.
Mm.
And so the real key to automation is to start with the streaming telemetry that comes from every router, that comes from every optical platform.
Mm.
So we have that streaming telemetry. We've had it for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now. And I think we were kind of leading the market in offering that, and people love it because you're basically getting every bit of information of what's happening with that platform real time. Now, like every one of us looking at the news, that there's only so much information that we can handle. There's only so much information that's relevant to us, and so at some point, all of that information has to be parsed. Some of it has to be, okay, this is completely irrelevant information, put it away, or it's so repetitive I don't need to see it on a regular basis. Here's some information that, okay, everything's doing fine. It's good for me to, be looking at this on a, semi-regular basis. And, oh, this is an anomaly. And why is this an anomaly? And what does it mean? And how do I deal with this? And so we've, had a couple of acquisitions that we've done, and we've pulled a lot of this together into our crosswork network automation platform. And that sort of merged it all together. So kind of starting with, we're getting the visibility, we're getting the analysis, and then we have to figure out how do we action on some of that. So I think we're fairly well along in the automation journey. I think people
Mm.
will jump in wherever they can. I think one of the hyperscalers said, for gosh sakes, you just start automating where you can.
Mhm.
You just have to start with it. Like we're already starting with it in our sort of personal lives. And so from a network infrastructure standpoint, you start doing it as much as you can and then building on it and building on it. But I think we've been in pretty good shape with the streaming telemetry and being able to parse out what's important, what's not important, and particularly the anomalies, which are really kind of cool. And then how do you deal with them?
Fascinating. Well, that'll be interesting to watch. You and your team also spend a lot of time talking about inclusivity, the inclusive internet, and closing the digital divide, which is amazing to see. I mean, looking backwards, I imagine a lot of your technology went into the G20 countries and big cities within those countries. But now, everywhere from India to Rwanda, you're seeing just amazing technology being deployed. That must be satisfying as well to see unfold.
It's very satisfying. We've done a lot with the broadband group to help get, higher capacity to areas that have been, completely underserved, if they have internet access at all. We've been working with many of the hyperscalers on their subsea connectivity to,
Mm.
South America, to Africa. Right now, Africa is being connected on the eastern seaboard and on the western seaboard,
Mm.
and that is fantastic because there have been outages for Africa, and when that happens, they don't have the luxury of having diverse subsea routes. So when they're
Right.
cut off, they're cut off, and so you definitely don't want to see that. So getting to underserved countries is absolutely wonderful, and I think we're going to be there if not there already, but I think we're getting there fairly quickly. And as far as like diversity goes, I mean, I think one of the things that was really great, one of the few good things that was good about COVID is our senior leadership was really reactive and caring about how people were handling being shut down and not being able to go to
Mm,
the office, and what this meant. And nobody knew what was going to happen, right? So we were all, people were fairly anxious, and then overlaying that with sort of what was happening, with what's his name, Floyd, George
mm,
Floyd, and so our senior leadership brought in a bunch of really leading minority folks to talk to us about what that meant, and they were absolutely fantastic. And so it just, there's a trickle down effect from the top that comes from really Chuck Robbins and his leadership team that has really endorsed empathy,
mm,
diversity, and care within. Some people might have thought that Cisco was a very political
mm.
organization years ago, and very much sort of I don't know. And it's to me, it's radically changed inside the company, and become a really great place to work. And that's been really heartwarming, I think, to a lot of people um, over time, how the whole world has been handled for inside a very large company. And I mean, I happen to know, talking to many of my other friends, that not that many other companies handled this whole time frame as well as I think Cisco did. So I'm very proud of that and thankful.
Oh, congratulations. That's wonderful to hear. Yes, it is rare in tech these days. So well done. Um, so what's on your radar for 2024? Any particular roadmap items or technology that you're really excited about that you can share?
I think we're excited about our deploying our new systems, which are new transponders and new line systems. They're all better than previous generations, and in this marketplace, the platforms just get better and better, and have more feature sets. And so we've got, basically, I almost shudder to say next generation, because they're already here, and we're deploying them in proof of concepts and everything else. So feel very good about our state of our equipment, and how competitive it is. I think we're going to continue. I think the Metro is going to continue to grow pretty dramatically. Maybe the Metro Edge a little bit more that people
Mm,
talk about. I think the subsea market is going to grow dramatically. I put out a blog recently on LinkedIn that talked a little bit about how some of the geopolitical issues that are going on, like there used to be 1 million drops in Hong Kong for subsea.
mhm,
Well, people are
mm,
worried that China's going to take over Hong Kong, so everybody started doing drops to Singapore, and
mm.
now worried about Taiwan. Guam has become a spot for a lot of drops. And of course, Australia is sort of the redundant, resilient spot as well. So there's a lot happening in the inter-Asia area to sort of help manifest this growth and connectivity. But there's additional connectivity happening for all of those same reasons, from the US to sort of everywhere. So that to me is a pretty exciting growth over the next year or so as well.
Yeah, fascinating topic. Well, you'll be flying from the Eastern Pacific to the Central Pacific for the PTC event, Pacific Telecom Council. I'm super jealous. I've never been. But what besides, palm trees and little tiki torches, what are you looking forward to there? It should be a phenomenal meetup.
We have some regular meetings that we have with many of our customers there. We'll be talking about some press releases that we've already put out, some press releases that are coming, and just updating many of our customers. And the diversity of the crowd there, we're always talking to new
Mm,
people, like new data center folks to talk to them about optics and the switches in the data center and kind of, sort of connecting them. So there's a lot of opportunity there. We are literally back-to-back meetings all 3.5 days. So,
Oh
um,
no, that's too much
oh
work
yeah,
for
there,
Hawaii.
there have been many times where my feet have not hit sand. But
Wow.
following up on all of this is OFC at the end of March in San Diego. And that's really our flagship tier one event where
Mhm.
we'll be doing a ton of demos there in our demo room. And uh, we'll have our full staff there as well. So if anybody who's listening to this right now is planning on going to OFC and wants to come and meet with us, just hit me up anywhere. You can DM me anywhere, and we'll make sure we get you in to see what we have and meet with us. But
Fantastic. Well, it's an
yeah,
exciting few months ahead, and I learned a lot. Thank you so much for sharing the insights. And you had your analyst hat on, so I got a great snapshot of the market and trends. And thanks for your time.
that was a pleasure, Evan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for watching. Reach out to Cisco and its various social properties. They have some great content and white papers in the works. So take care, everyone. Thanks,
Great.
Eve.
Thank you. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.